Did you know that not all zirconia is the same? Zircad Prime Zirconia from Ivoclar is uniquely produced with GT technology, which allows two powders that normally sinter at different intervals to be combined into one material which sinters uniformly. The manufacturing process not only optimizes the translucent properties, but also creates a seamless progression of shade while maintaining optimal strength. Zircad Prime and Prime Aesthetic is now more affordable than ever and will give you the results that your dentist will notice. Contact us today to learn more about Zircad Prime and how Ivoclar can support your success. Tell them you heard it on the podcast and get a free Prime or Prime Aesthetic disc to try. Just use promo code 723. For all this information, visit the Ivoclar tab on the Voices from the Bench website. This is Laura Gilbert, Director of Technical Marketing at Ivoclar, wishing you a successful 2024.
Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Greetings and welcome to episode 309 of Voices from the Bench. My name is Elvis.
And my name is Barbara.
What's happening, Barb? How are you?
Well, you and I both know we're recording this Monday night, and it's the day before I leave for Chicago, so I'm super psyched. I got a lot to do. I got to get packed. I got to get ready, but I'm ready to go, and I'm really psyched.
Yeah, same. I haven't even started packing, and I'm leaving like the day after tomorrow. But yeah, just by the time everyone listened to this episode, last weekend was LMT Lab Day Chicago. Barb and I would love to tell you all about it and how great of a time we had. Like we mentioned, we're recording this long before Barb and I go out there for 5 days because we don't want to have to worry about getting an episode out on Monday.
Which, you know what, we're pretty darn consistent, so that's pretty impressive if you ask me.
We haven't missed it in 309 weeks.
You know it.
Not going to let a little lab day get in the way.
That's right.
So, we're hoping everybody had a fantastic time.
They did.
Yeah, of course we did. And social media was filled of all the great pictures.
You know it.
Can't wait to actually do it.
And thank you to everybody that stopped by or will stop by to the Ivoclar Ballroom and to the Cal Lab night. Say hi to us and tell us about your amazing life as a dental technician. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll have a ton of great interviews that we got while we were in Chicago.
And Elvis might give me a Friday off because he'll be so happy and not stressed because he's got like 5 full hours. Hopefully more.
Hopefully more.
A lot more.
So this week, I had the opportunity to talk to a lab owner out of Florida.
Oh, man.
Yep, that has a unique look at getting new employees. Now, Barb, I believe this was the day your lab lost internet?
Dude, we lost everything.
Yeah.
Not just internet to like hardcore. So, yeah.
It was not a good day. Let's just say your priorities were elsewhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, because they're always with the podcast.
Of course. Okay. But
Right.
I already moved this one like twice for my own purposes, and I didn't want to move it again, so...
Understood.
John Rano's father started delivering cases by train in Argentina at a very young age. Eventually, his dad learned the craft and moved to Canada. Now, John, he grew up in his dad's lab. And at 14, he started to seriously look at being a dental technician and started doing the usual tasks of someone that wants to learn the trade.
Yeah, making model patties.
Oh, there's a lot of that. Packing cases, breaking things up, sweeping floors.
Oh, yeah.
And his dad was early into doing all-on-X conversions. And it's hilarious that John was thrown into doing his first conversion on a birthday.
Good for him. Hey, trial by fire.
There you go. Gotta learn it somehow.
Yep.
Eventually, he and his dad saw things differently, and John went out on his own. After working for another lab, John opened up his own business called Unique Solutions Dental Lab. But John has learned valuable lessons over the years and shares with us how we are doing a disservice to the new technicians coming into the industry by not giving them positive reinforcement and allowing them to love their job.
I love my job.
I do too. I love your job.
Thank you.
Just kidding. It's a great conversation about respect and leaving behind a better industry than before. So join us as we chat with John Rano. Whether you're looking to elevate your craftsmanship or looking to cut back on cost, look no further.
VITA MFT teeth are the ultimate solution for creating lifelike and stunning smiles.
Crafted with precision and backed by cutting-edge technology, VITA MFT teeth offer unparalleled aesthetics and durability.
And since VITA believes in the power of experiencing excellence firsthand, for a limited time only, they are offering you the chance to get a complimentary case sample.
That's right, a full case absolutely free. Just visit vitanorthamerica.com/free MFT.
Don't wait any longer to start providing your customers a premium tooth at an economy price. Redeem your free case sample, and if you're ready to buy, VITA will even give you an extra 10% off discount by shopping online on their newly launched online store.
Join the VITA family today, and we appreciate your support of the podcast.
Hey, it's Candulor from Switzerland. We have been designing teeth since 1936. Successful tooth design knows only one benchmark: your own standards and those of your patients. Discover our tooth line PhysioSet TCR with new 18 anterior molds, manufactured specially for the US market and your daily work at your bench. If you are looking for new options in removable, get to know us at candulor.com and find out more. You will be supported and supplied by our authorized dealer, Edmunds Dental Supply. Candulor. High-end only.
Voices from the bench. The interview. We'd like to welcome to the podcast today a gentleman that I believe it was Bobby Kenny that reached out to me and said, "You got quite the story to tell." John Rano, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you, Elvis?
Doing fantastic. Where are you at? You in Florida where Bobby used to be?
Yes, I'm over in Boynton Beach.
Where is that in Florida? I'm not familiar.
It's about an hour or so away from Miami, so we're a little hour north between West Palm.
Sure.
Yeah. I just opened up my laboratory June of last year.
That's awesome.
It's been a dream of mine, but I did, started with my dad a long time ago. And I think I was about 15 years old.
So your dad was a technician?
All my life, I've grown up in dental labs. So he owned a dental lab in the West Coast, so in Cape Coral. And he had about like a 30-man lab at one point. I was just running around in diapers. just messing around, playing with putty and doing all sorts of stuff. And
was it one of those things that every day after school you had to go to the lab?
Yeah, it was. Every day after school, weekends, all kinds of things. I have 4 other sisters, so...
You're one boy with 4 sisters?
Yeah,
wow.
I have 2... Yeah, I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger sisters. But the 3 of us, before the other 2 were born, were just like running around crazy in the lab, messing with people.
Sure.
And I'm sure the employees didn't like it back then, but or maybe they did. But, we used to just mess around. I mean, he used to just – it's easy when you have kids in a lab because it's just so many cool things to mess around with. It is dangerous, but
oh, sure,
it's a risk he was willing to take.
What's the earliest thing you remember?
The earliest thing I remember, so my dad is a resident in the U.S. He was born in Argentina, and he moved.
Okay.
At 18 years old, he moved up to Canada and so forth. He was always a technician. And I remember – I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years old. And it was the start of his lab's name was Argentina Dental Lab.
Okay.
So,
kind of like Argentina?
Yeah, it was an
that
interesting
is kind of
name.
Interesting.
They were a full service lab, but he started in his garage. I remember walking into the garage and seeing him on the bench. And I'm saying, did you cut those teeth out of people? Because he had the dentures in his hands. I have no understanding of what he's doing at that point in time. So, and he's like, no, but you want to watch? And I was just like fascinated because I was thinking my dad's cutting people's mouths off and, whatever a little kid's imagination goes to.
And I'm sure he had a big flame going.
Oh, yeah.
Sparked a young boy's interest.
I love fire because of him. But yeah, he was originally a removable tech, but he became well-rounded with ceramics and even orthodontic appliances as well.
Where did he learn it? Did he learn it in Argentina?
Yeah, so actually I went to Argentina when I was, I think, 12 or 13, like a year before I started really actually working in the lab, like putting time in.
Yeah.
And I met his first boss, his first employer. And he was from the Netherlands, but he lived in Argentina. And he took my dad in as a delivery boy. So back then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so back then they would basically have a bunch of packages. And instead of having a car, because that wasn't really available in the country to just have cars.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have to wake up and get to the train stop at like I want to say like 5 o'clock in the morning, and he'd have to get off on each stop of the train and walk the packages out into the town to where the doctors are.
Oh, that's insane!
And drop them off, and then he'd have to come all the way back. So, and he
delivered by train.
Yeah, and he was, and the crazy thing is he was like 11 or 10.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, and I used to hear these stories, and I used to think like, oh, you're over exaggerating. And no, I mean, I talked to his boss, and he said, well, he really wanted to learn a job because he was one of 10 brothers and sisters, only had their mom raising them, so they were in a bad spot. So every kid had to work and bring the money back home.
Wow.
So he said, well, I want to know what you guys do here. So he said, well, listen, I need you to deliver my packages. I have nobody else to. But if you want to learn, make it back by 5, and I'll spend an hour with you each day. Well, back then he was getting back at around like 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night.
Oh.
So he was like, well, I have to wake up earlier. So he'd get to the stops, and he'd drop them outside the door before the practices were open. And he would get back, and he's like, okay, sweep the floors. And he's like, what? I wanted to learn. He's like, yeah, you're gonna learn. We have to learn how to keep up with everything and make sure that you can clean up after yourself. So he eventually started growing, and whatever, time goes on. He started becoming, doing like bite rims and stuff like that. So up until he was 18, he started doing setups. He was doing PFMs. He was doing everything.
Wow.
And he was making good money back then.
Yeah.
And he ended up having to leave because of, back then they were doing, what would you call that? Like a draft.
Oh yeah, for like a military. Yeah.
And yeah, they were forcefully drafting everyone that was 18 and able-bodied. So he left. He got on a plane and left when he became 18 with his little brother, and went to Canada.
Yeah, good old Canada. That's where everybody goes when they want to avoid.
Yeah, good old Canada, eh? But yeah, so years go by, and he meets my mom, and things happen, and there's me, right, and my other sisters. He just said, like, I have a family, and not really technology, but procedures were getting a lot more advanced. You were starting to see all on fours, one in a while, like the Brennemark system and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
And he was like,
the early days.
Yeah, and he was jumping in on them and doing one there, and starting to do kind of like conversions. But back then it wasn't really. They would take it back to the lab, they process it. So he was like big into the chair side. So he said, well, a lot of the labs around town that he started working for, they really wanted him to stay in the lab and be like a bench technician. And, he has a family, and he wanted to make a better life for his family as well. And he just always dreamt of opening his own lab. So he just one day quit. Not one day, but he gave us 2 weeks. Yeah. But you know how that can go.
Yeah, sure.
If you give you 2 weeks and tell somebody that you're opening your own business, it can be your final day.
Yeah. That's funny that someone just told me about that like yesterday.
Yeah. That happened. We'll get into that, but that happened to me too. But
yeah.
Good intentions, but I obviously, as a business owner, I understand that there's not really a level of insecurity there. Just like it's just like your initial reaction is like, no, let's stop it here because I don't want to lose my accounts to this person, whatever it is. But he started in his garage and did removables, stuff like that. So that's how I became a part of this whole thing. And he grew it, and he had like a freestanding building. He had like about 5,000, 6,000 square foot facility. They were doing conversions by like, I want to say like 1999 or early 2000s. He was doing a couple direct to implant, and then it really started picking up. And like in 2008, it was like they were doing a lot of like cast bars and stuff, some crazy stuff like for immediate load, which today would be like, oh my gosh, why are we doing so much work for this?
Yeah. We all remember casting bars, man. Whew.
Yeah, it's like that turning point in every profession where there's a push to do something, so people are just going to try whatever they think could change the game.
Sure.
And like right now is like photogrammetry, and like there's other things out there that we never thought would come of it. So he was doing that, and he was working on a facility with a doctor to create like a same day teeth facility. This was 2008 or 2009. Well, that doctor ended up passing the night before the deal was supposed to be signed. So
you mean he died?
Fell back. Yeah, he died. He died in his sleep.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and he had fronted he was supposed to come in and front majority stake in the company and in the land to build it. It was, I think my dad still has the blueprint of it to this day, but it was like a mega facility, like 12,000 square foot. Top floor was the lab, and the bottom floor was the dentist office.
Yeah, the clinical
surgical
part,
rooms, everything like that.
Nice.
Yeah, the clinical part. And he backed out of didn't back out of it. He died. So everything kind of like jumped into my dad's lap. By that time, I don't know how 2008 affected you, but 2008 was pretty rough year for everybody. So he ended up having to basically shut his operations down because he lost so much money on the deal.
Oh, so he even lost his lab that was his own.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he lost it all. So what he did is one of the technicians, and I'm still very close with him, he had all his equipment. He gave all his equipment to this guy and said, listen, hire all these people, take my accounts, but I can no longer stabilize the lab. But I think you can. Hire who you can, and let's try to keep these people employed. And so then my dad basically had to, bankruptcy, all this stuff. And which is well known. Like, this isn't like some secret.
No, sure.
Anybody that knows him kind of knows. So that guy's actually, he's still in business. And I actually went down and saw him. I seen some of the people that saw me as a baby that are still working for him, which is nice to see. So,
sure.
And he's doing well. So my dad, we all moved to Canada. And he got a great job opportunity in Canada. We had family in Canada from his side. And, he was working there and working with a denturist there, which is interesting because Canada is so much different in terms of like removable dentistry, like with the denturist and like how they can just see patients and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So with that, he got a lot of opportunities to really be chairside, like all the time chairside. And he got very comfortable with it, and he really liked it. So we ended up moving down, and he became a lab manager at Clear Choice in Tyson's Corner.
Okay.
And he was doing all the all-on-4 work, all that stuff. So he was basically kind of like coming back down and working his way back down to Florida. So, after a couple of years of that, he started coming back down. We went back down to Florida, and he started back in his garage, and I was 14, 15. So he said, well, you've always liked this. He calls me Johnny. That's a lot of my friends and family say. And he said, if you want to, he's like, you can learn, but you're going to have to work. And every day after school, you're going to have to work and help me because I can't, I cannot handle all of this workload. And if you want to help me grow, you can be a part of it, whatever it is. So I did that. Every day after school, I was investing, hand packing cases, boiling them out. I was some 14, 15-year-old kid doing that, listening to music and just kind of, going through the motions. And I really liked that part, I did love the dirty work. I liked making models. I liked articulating.
I get it. Yeah.
But my thing is I love to watch him set teeth in wax. And I was like, man, if I could learn that, like, I feel like I'd just be like, I would be so much more value to him and, to his lab and that he's creating.
Was he the only one setting teeth at this time?
Yeah, we were in the garage. Like, this was our house that we were renting, and the landlord was nice enough to let him open up a small lab in the garage. So he had like a bench and all the denture teeth and all that stuff. So he was just doing like 2-day dentures, same-day dentures sometimes. And it got to a point where it was so busy that he finally was able to open up his location in Orlando again. So with all that time going by, I'm learning all this stuff. And then, digital started getting really crazy. And, you had like Exocad was starting to get pretty popular. 3Shape was already there.
Yep.
And Nobel Procera was like the big thing with the buying the scanner and the whole scan body kit. So he bought the Procera and one day, and we were like maybe a month in, 2 months into moving into a freestanding laboratory. And he goes, "You need to figure this out because I don't know what the hell I'm doing here." And
what was that scanner called? I can't remember.
The Procera, the Nobel Procera scanner.
Didn't the scanner have a different name?
Maybe not. No, I think it was the Procera.
Yeah.
And I know that there was another one that came out later with Nobel design, but we never really got into the Nobel design software, which I think is just a one-off from Exocad. But yeah, so, he just drops this on me. I don't know anything about abutments. I don't know anything about designing, but I was a gamer and I was pretty fluent with technology.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Well, you would be better off doing this than I would." So it started there. And we ended up, after, establishing some of the design department, we started getting Exocad, we started getting mills down the road. And then, I think we got into like metal milling and stuff like that when I was around like maybe 19, 20. It started growing exponentially, and we started doing a lot of fully digital stuff back then too, like where it was modelless arches and the stackable guides. We did a lot of that stuff.
So you were milling what, bars?
We were milling bars, abutments, full art zirconia.
Out of a garage?
No. So when we moved to a freestanding building, when we got Procera, we got into
right.
like a 12.
Yeah.
We got into like a 1,200 square foot place, and we just grew it out. I mean, we got really busy and stuff. So yeah, we were milling all kinds of stuff. Then, guided surgery came along, and we were using a lot of co-diagnostics, and we started doing, we were doing a lot of conversions at that point. So let me bring you back to kind of when we started doing a lot of chairside stuff. When I was 18, on my 18th birthday, he had scheduled 2 emergency conversions. One my dad had to go to, and one I've never done, but I've watched, probably 20, 30 of them. He sent me on my 18th birthday with, I don't know if you know who Dr. Sandeep Ruwal is, but he was a bigger dentist. He was a Nobel lecturer in Florida, but he sent me with him. So I did my first all-on-4 conversion on zygomatic, like a quad zygomatic case.
Wait a minute, your first one?
Yeah. And
without ever like doing it with your dad or anything?
No, I only watched, and it was a situation where we had to do it. It was a patient that couldn't be moved, and they were scheduled in an OR. They was in a hospital too, on top of it.
Yeah.
On top of it being very, very nerve-wracking as the first one, I had to scrub in. To be in the facility, and I'm like sweating through my clothes, like I'm very nervous. But I was with Sandeep. Sandeep has done conversions, so he was there to coach me through it if I needed help.
Yeah. When you're with a good surgeon, they can be a huge help. I mean, working with the right doctor. Yeah, and he was. I'm sure other people know him. He's very well known. But Sandeep Rawal, I mean, shout out to him for teaching me a lot of the things that I have learned clinically, because he didn't hold back ever. He always told me, through the clinical side and the lab side. And he always told me when I was wrong, which was, I respected. I didn't like it all the time, but it's a learning, it's something that you need to do to be able to further your education. I did the case, and I was scared throughout the whole way, but it succeeded. Everything was good. I would have sweat 40 pounds, man.
Yeah, thinking about it now still makes me nervous.
Yeah, I bet.
And just because of I'll never forget the day, because it was my birthday too. I'm like, man, I don't even want to work today. I want to relax, and then I got this thing. And so after I did that, I thought oh man, I don't know if they're gonna like it, whatever it is. But they ended up calling my dad, and they were like, can we use your son for the next one? And I was like,
really?
Yeah. I was like, there's no way I did a good enough job to where they want to ask back. And very well, the next one I was able to do it, and from there on I was doing, I want to say, over 150 arches a year.
Wow.
And I was out. I mean, I ended up taking away a lot of the conversions from my dad so he could stay into the lab and build it. So I was traveling to Tampa. I even flew up to Georgia for a couple of them. I was out all week up until probably about 23, 22 years old. So I had a lot of experience through those years from 18 to 22.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
How do you travel with a conversion kit? How do you get that through security? I've always wondered that with people that travel.
So a lot of it is driving. So, but
okay.
for flying, you can ship it. They'll just buy a kit.
Oh, I see.
And
yeah.
we'll set them up, and they'll just keep it in their office. Yeah, flying is crazy. I mean, I have a couple of stories where like flying back with like titanium bars that are still in the puck, and going through customs like on a carry-on, and they're like, "What is this? This doesn't make any sense. Is this is this a weapon?" And I'm like, "No, this is actually on the way back from Chicago. I got a couple bars milled from a company, and I brought them back, and I forgot to not keep them in my carry-on, and they stopped me, and we missed our flight. It was pretty fun."
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. To that's foreign. They're like, "This looks like it belongs to an alien." I'm like, "My gosh, no."
Yeah.
Please don't say that right now. But yeah, I had a lot of that experience, but unfortunately, we ended up not seeing eye to eye when I was about 23 years old.
Who, you and your dad?
Yeah, me and my dad didn't end up seeing eye to eye. We had different visions, different paths that we wanted to take.
Yeah.
And, we kind of, I kind of agreed, like, if you want to go this way, it's fine. And because my dad's an older guy now, he's 63, but back then he was turning 60. And I was saying, like, you're going to be retiring soon, and I think we should really start working towards, how we're going to, how am I going to take it over? Because mainly
transition.
By then I was lab manager, and I was moving cases through. I was training people, onboarding people, and I was like, I have all that down, and I have managers in the positions that they need to be in. But long term, we need to talk about this, because if we're unprepared, that's where you see a lot of businesses collapse. You have to have a plan, like an exit strategy. And he didn't really believe in that too much, and he kind of took it a little personal, which is fine. I mean, I love my dad, but I ended up giving him the time that he needed to get some other people. And I've met you before at Peterson. So
you were there when I was there?
Yes, yeah. But I was quiet. But I kind of kept to myself. But Chris and I met in FDLA back when I was like 21, and I really enjoyed Chris's mindset and how he was like he was a younger owner, and it was passed down from his family, but he didn't want to cross that boundary. He's like, I understand, because I worked with my dad passed it down to me, and I would never want to overstep, but I want to say, like, if it doesn't work out and you've tried your best, give me a call. So I did. I tried my best. We worked things out, and it was mutual when I left, and I ended up going to see Chris down in Del Rey, and he ended up hiring me as the director of digital manufacturing.
Wow.
And I brought in a few things into the lab there, like exocad and some guided surgery procedures, and just kind of cleaning up the processes to make them a little more streamlined.
Yeah.
Mostly on digital side. And, I learned a lot from them as well. But I think I remember that day you came. You were with Preet, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you had those funny memes. So I didn't know too much about you. But I was sitting in the back corner, and I was just like, a lot of people were engaged and stuff like that. But I was just thinking of this. I was like, nobody has what you have in dentistry. There's a lot with other corporations, or a lot of other social media accounts for other professions. But like for you, you're like the one guy that does it, and you're known for it. And it's nice because it's positive, and it makes it fun to see the things like the memes that you make, or even just like this podcast, for example. I think this is a really good idea, because you see, like, I don't know if you're into like comedian podcasts, or like
oh
Joe Rogan
yeah,
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like those are amazing, right? And I'm like, man, what if somebody had that for dentistry? Because it's never been heard of for us, really, other than like small ones in the lab maybe. But for you'd connect with people from all sorts of labs, clinicians too. And I was like, well, this is really cool. And you still get to work your 9-to-5 job if you want to, like you were working with Preet, and they let you do it. And it's because you have a good heart behind it. So I don't know. I was impressed with it, because it was cool. It was really
I appreciate
cool,
that.
To see it. Yeah.
There's a lot of dentist podcasts out there. I mean, a lot of them geared towards dentists. And there's been a couple labs that have started podcasts in the past, but they always gear it towards dentists and trying to like get business. And I get that. I mean, what a good way to attract work. But I wanted to make something that was by labs for labs, you know? That's really the whole idea behind it.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% that, as far as like as a lab owner, podcasts geared towards dentists have an effect, but it's not as big of an effect as if you have this type of podcast, for example. There's other ways to market your lab to obtain dentists and new accounts. But the main problem we all have is acquiring technicians, and having podcasts like this and having technicians listening to it, and how different labs across the country structure their lab, or how they have their workflow around cases, or just, hearing the owner talk in a relaxed setting can either give them a good or a bad judgment on the person, and say like, hey, maybe like maybe this is a lab that I'd like to work for. Maybe, oh, I'm glad I don't want to say it, but like, I'm glad I didn't, because I kind of figured out like their paths are, yeah, exactly. Like maybe they're not aligned with my morals or what I want to do with my career. Cause it exposes you good or bad in these kinds of settings, as it does for everybody else in podcasts. I worked right with Chris, and it was a very good experience because it opened my mind, because I'm a typical, my dad owned a lab. I was going to take it over, but then along that process, I didn't. And I think that it was a really good thing that it didn't, because I was able to open my mind again to other laboratories and how they run their operations. And also another family owned operation, to see, is some of the stuff that I went through normal?
Yeah.
In other family laboratories, because you think, well, because your family, there's a lot of headbutting, usually. And there's not a lot of professionalism between the family members most of the time. And like, I saw that you can be professional with Peterson, because they did a really good job with that. But then I also saw like the same thing that I had with my dad, is like, you have, and just in general, I have this page with my dad, and we're on the same page. But then the rest of the employees aren't on the same page as us, because we fail to share that with them. And whether it's you get what I don't know how to explain that better.
No, it's perfect. Yeah.
Like, we're here, we're together, we understand each other, but the rest of the employees don't understand us, because we are not vocal about what we want with them. And that happens a lot. And I think in family owned businesses, in not just in dental, but in just businesses in general, because you have that connection with your family member that you don't naturally share with other people. And that gets passed down generationally. So yeah, of course, like laboratories that were generational, they set the footprint for the future, and where dentistry is going, or where dental laboratories are going and technology is going. It's great, but it's still very biased, and there's not a lot of open-mindedness. So there's like traits that are passed down. And obviously I am not a very established businessman that's been in business for a long time, but I know that the breakup between the passing along, taking the family torch and continuing that breakup and going somewhere else, I've learned so much about people and work environment, than I would have ever had if I just stayed with my dad, because I'd be so closed off from it. And made me understand and appreciate people and respect people in a different way, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And it's amazing. And it's something that not everyone gets a chance to learn, And I can't imagine what you've learned in that transition that's allowed you to be a better business owner today.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the stuff is basic, but there's a lot of, well, let's put it this way. I'm 26, and I'm very digital with my my technical skills. But in the process, I was lucky enough to have a dad that taught me hands-on from the beginning first. So I understand the touch, the feel, the dexterity. I have the dexterity to do things, set teeth. I can apply porcelain, all those things I can do, which is a great foundational skill. But there is also another great skill that a lot of younger technicians have, which is being a designer or a camming person, whether they're running machinery or they're designing digitally. And a lot of the times is like, the older generation, doesn't have the same or value the same respect for that skill as if you're a hands-on tech. And I see that a lot. I see it even as a business owner. I still see it when I interview people, that there's a lack of respect, and I get that lack of respect too, even as being the owner, which is, in my opinion, is not true at all, because the way that the business is going, everything's going to be digitally made. I mean, for the most part, everything is. At least for my lab, I don't have a model department in my lab. Everything is digital, and majority of it is modelless. If we print models, it's for a specific case, but like all my full arch cases are modelless. So that's a specific set of skills, and it takes a special person to really truly understand the processes in digital dentistry. It's getting more common. People are understanding it more, but to truly understand it, it's a skill of its own. And I don't know. I just in my experiences I've seen, and that's helped me be I think a better business owner and a better leader, is if when you're hiring a younger person and they're a CAD CAM technician, and you have a hands-on technician, whether they have more experience, 10, 15, 20 years of experience hands-on, there can't be too much of a devalue the younger person because they haven't done the hands-on, or I don't know. I don't know. I'm
no, I think it makes sense.
My tongue, but
no, you're fine. I think we have to utilize these new wave of technicians where analog is understood, but it's not taught.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, like, I think in a way we have to empower the younger generation for what they do and give them the confidence that they need to continue to want to grow their skill or to learn another skill in the lab, whether it's hands-on. Because when talk down on something or tell them, hey, you don't understand, you only do it on the computer, which I hear that constantly, and it's really, it's a messed up thing to say to somebody that's learning exactly what you did, your entire career, but on a computer screen. It's the same thing. It's just a different process. And it's still respectable as the older technician or the technician that's hands-on. They're at equal respect that they deserve. But I guess maybe because technology has been so new to a lot of people that they don't understand it, so they devalue it. Or in general, what I'm trying to say is a lot of technicians that are younger don't have the confidence to continue to learn. And what I've seen firsthand is a lot of technicians that are younger that were doing good, that were like, I saw a value where they were going to just skyrocket. They were eventually going to get very good and be very advanced in what they were doing and make a good living for themselves, or even become a leader, a manager, or even an owner. But they lose that confidence along the way. And I've seen a lot of them just completely change careers or go work from home and lose the motivation to do what they were doing. Because if I'm going to work, and the attitude is, if I'm going to work in a place where they don't value my knowledge, or if I'm not good enough because I do this skill, then why am I here? And obviously there's counter argument to that too, but that's where I see a lot of it. I've seen about 3 or 4 people just completely change career paths because of this.
Who's discouraging them? Other people in the lab?
Yeah, and it's happening with my dad, right? He has first-handedly discouraged. In the beginning have discouraged some other people too, and I've learned from it. But it's more of like you have 2 different employees in a lab, and I think is the ones that are the elder employees, or like the people that have the most knowledge or the most experience in a certain skill.
Sure.
Let's say any skill that there is in the lab, and they're going to QC a case, or they receive a case from a technician, a digital technician that designed it and they milled it and they got it in their hand.
Yep.
And it's all subjectivity. Most of the time it's subjectivity in the lab.
100%.
This abutment isn't designed in this way. It's not right. It's not correct. And there's like stuck in their ways where it's like, this is not correct. Well, not necessarily it's not correct. It's functional, it's passable, and it works. Now, if you want it to change, you have to come at it like, not in a way it was like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. Like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
It's not wrong. And I guess it's like the terminology. And I think it gets passed down in a way from the top, like me, for example. Like, for me, if I react to my manager that's, let's say, has been a technician for 30 years, and they say, well, this abutment was designed this way, and I go, that's completely wrong, or that's not good. It's the terminology that we use, I think, is from the top is kind of not helping. And obviously there's just people that are just going to talk like that no matter what. But in a way, it's like, well, I understand what you did here, but our standard for the lab is this way. Can we do it this way? Or if you think that this is better, let's have a discussion about it. And maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is a better way to do it. Or maybe it saves time in the design. As long as it's functionable, it's going to seat, and it's not going to come back for a remake. It's, in my opinion, is adequate as long as the quality of work is maintained.
No, I mean, it's a great point.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to encourage anybody to do anything, the last thing you want to do is tell them they're wrong. You want to be able to, utilize what they've done, encourage betterness without discouraging, God, I have a hard time explaining it, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Elvis, in my mind, I have the exact explanation, but as soon as I try to explain it, it's so difficult to say it. But yeah, I'm glad you understand. I'm sure a lot of people will understand what I'm saying too.
Yeah.
I think it's detrimental to the future of the technician to positively reinforce, even if they're wrong, positively reinforce them. So understand why they did it that way first. Become aware, self-aware. Put yourself in their shoes and be like, oh, okay, I understand why you do that. Maybe you came from a different lab and they have a different way of designing, and we didn't tell you that, or we didn't give you the procedure or the work instructions to do so for that. Or maybe they were left out. Maybe that needs to be added in. Instead of going right to the excuse my French, the talking in the lab, where it's like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. I don't know why we hired them. You hear that all the time behind their back. And you know what that does for everybody else around them? It gives them a negative eye against that person. And then it discourages. Then that person immediately, their confidence is like dropped immediately. And I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, and why would they want to work there at that point? I mean,
yeah, and it's honestly in the same way where I say, like, the positive reinforcement comes from the top. So if you positively reinforce your managers, it trickles down for the most part, unless you got some mad person or just a person where they have a bad temperament. Maybe they're not good for the position. But when you have positive reinforcement trickling down from the top, it usually continues all the way down.
Yeah.
And you start to get a positive work environment. Now, the same thing can be said. The people up top can be unaware, depending on the size of the lab, can be unaware that this is happening. And then when, let's say, that technician finally comes up to the owner, or the owner is finally made aware, it's too late and they can't change their mind, and that can also affect. So depending on the size, and that taught me as well, like, we're a small operation still, but it's teaching me, make your hires very carefully in the beginning. And I think hiring from the top down helps a lot too. So instilling management in the beginning before you have all these employees, and then you bump an employee up to management, because you really need to reinforce the positivity from the management group that you start with first. And then those managers can hire in your technicians. That's how I believe. That's what I gained from my experience. And obviously I'm learning every day. I have so much time to learn so much more information, but I was lucky enough to be able to experience both sides, and I got a lot of great things from Peterson, and I respect them wholeheartedly. And I still talk to them today. My lab's not too far from them. I learned what they did right, and something that I would always keep in the back of my mind whenever I'm making a decision. And then I also know, the environment on my dad's lab and their lab, like, what's the negatives? And I want to make sure that I keep that in my head too when I'm making decisions, that I'm not making the same decision that caused that. And I think that goes for everybody. Just like when you're learning a new skill, it's like, I did that wrong, don't do it again. And in business, I feel like I've learned from other people what they did right and what they did wrong. And I want to make sure I don't do the same thing, or if they did well, I want to do the same thing.
You know what I also see in labs a lot is, while they don't do negative feedback, they do no feedback. And you have a technician that just keeps doing whatever they want to do. It could be right, but it's not up to standard. And then the next person is constantly correcting it.
This is true.
That's not good either.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that all the time. That's a great point. The thing is, in a way, and I think that part of this is the scarcity of technicians, is as we are afraid to give the positive feedback, right? Which I'll get into that. But the negative feedback is almost because they're scared of losing people, because it's hard to get technicians.
Sure.
It's hard to find technicians nowadays, especially digital technicians and, full arch technicians, if that's what your lab is. A lot of technicians can be trained. Like, I mean, I worked with Allie, and Allie does a great job. She's offering like a great thing and I know she's been on your podcast a couple times.
Yeah, Allie Williamson, sure.
Yeah, they're great. Like I learned a lot from her, and I learned a lot from Mark as well.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, just like the perspective that Mark and her have in the lab, I don't know, it changed me completely in a way. Like, it made me just appreciate them in another level.
Sure.
But yeah, like just the negative feedback, because you don't want that technician to leave, because you know how hard it was to get them there and train them and invest all this time. So, a lot of the times, a lot of labs will have write-up policies and action plans if they're, under producing, or they have an attitude, or they're just being unprofessional. And it's all there. It's all on paper, but the manager's very scared to pick up that paper and fill it out.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be the reason why you lose a technician, and then all your other technicians now have to take on that workload. But I think a lot of the main cause of that has to do with the positive reinforcement, because I have a lot of technician friends, and I'm sure you do, and there's, like you said, the lack of positive reinforcement, or if you did a good job, there's none of that. There's no.
It's a thankless job.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's a thankless job, and in a way, we don't do it for the pat on the back, but the pat on the back sometimes it feels good, because we do this for more than just money. Most of us, and I would like to say, because we do it for inevitably to serve the clinician, and also to serve the patient, to better serve the patient, and
100%.
to be able to make sure that the patient is as comfortable as they can in the transition to getting their new teeth, because those teeth are not natural. It's going to be a process of rehabilitation for that patient. So the less steps, the less appointments, the more comfortable the prosthesis is, the happier the patient, the happier the technician, in my opinion, or the happier the lab. And we need to understand that we're doing a good job. We don't always need to hear that we're not a good enough technician, or we don't know what we're doing, or you're not paying attention. Obviously we all need to read lab scripts, because we all apparently sometimes forget, but I think that's just like a passed down trait of lab technicians. But yeah, I just think, like you said, the positive reinforcement is a really big deal in any sort of profession, but especially in the lab, because we just lack it. We just don't have we never really have a good structure. There's not a lot of schools to be able to teach you about the laboratory business. There's not really anything like that out there.
Oh no, not anymore.
And which is unfortunate. But I think that we could get to that point as lab owners. I think it's our duty to positively reinforce everybody that comes through, especially the younger generation, because what happens when you retire, or what happens when you're done and it's your time to step out of the world? And I mean, for the most part, for me at least, I want to be able to leave the world knowing I gave as much information to the next person to continue to better.
That's awesome.
To continue to better the patients and better the dental profession that we're in. And I think a lot of people want it. I feel like a lot of people don't realize the damage that maybe they're doing, maybe because they're just not aware that that's what's causing it. But we're in a generation where, I mean, you hear it all the time. We're lazy. We don't want to work that hard, and we want to get maximum reward.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, I see it as take advantage of the fact that they don't want to work as hard and they want a bigger reward. If you can empower somebody and get them to latch onto a skill and really enjoy their job, they're going to find out a way to do less work for more. And that's going to benefit your laboratory tenfold, because they're going to come up with processes that are going to cut down patient appointments, that are going to cut down the time that the case is in the lab, because they don't want to work on it. That's my idea of it. That's how I think.
Yeah.
I'm constantly trying to figure out, how can I get this case out of my lab quicker every time? And how can I cut down an appointment so the case is delivered and I don't have to deal with it anymore? Because I want to move on to the next thing. I don't want to cut corners. I just want to find a better process. And I think there's a lot of us out there but we're kind of like pushed under a rug, if you
Sure.
may, you know. And I don't think they have time to really like bloom in a way and show their true colors, that they do want to do better. It's just a different mindset, you know, because I came from my dad being from South America, hard worker, woke up at 4 o'clock, got on the train, delivered cases, then had to learn a skill after 10 hours of work as a kid. And like, yeah, they had to do that. They had to work because back, you know, in that time is like time means more money in a way. And I understand that you have to do that. But honestly, if I don't have to do that, I don't want to do it. You know, no, just like anybody nowadays, nobody really wants to have to put in too much time. Now, as an owner, I mean, I'm here all the time, but
you're a lab owner.
As far as employees, you know, but this is, yeah, I'm a lab owner. I mean, I don't think I've missed a day in the last 10 months, you know. I've been in here every day of the week, but that's because it's my baby, you know. But if you're an employee of a place, you should be able to work within those hours, you know, that were agreed upon, and be able to set that up. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where there's mistakes and you have to stay late if you messed up. But like,
sure,
the less time that we have employees in the building and the more work that we produce is better for everybody. So, in my opinion.
What's the name of your lab? I don't even think you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's Unique Solutions Dental Lab. Yeah, sorry, we just kind of jumped right into a big thing here, but
yeah, no, it's good stuff. But I can't imagine how great of a environment you have at your lab. Honestly, I mean, how many employees do you have?
I have 2.
Okay,
so we're very small.
Yeah,
I have 2, but I'm planning on growing it. But my whole motto is less is more. Like we were just talking about, we produce quite a bit of stuff. So we produce about 48 arches a month.
Wow.
Full arch cases. And we're doing about, I want to say like 40 or 50 screw retain units a month. And then we have dentures. We're full service, but everything's done digitally. So nothing is processed, nothing's traditional. And no, like again, I'm pretty proud on the no model room.
Yeah.
Because that just, I don't like the model room at all. I really don't ever want to pour models again or have people do it. I'd rather just hire new people in and just get them into like camming or 3D printing. From a hiring standpoint, it's prettier.
Oh,
it's easier to be able to bring in because people want to 3D print. I mean, you see it on TikTok, you see it on everything. Like people just love watching 3D print videos, and that's a real good way of getting an entry-level technician in and focused into the lab.
Oh, it's definitely more attractive than a model room, yeah.
That's right, attractive.
Yeah.
I didn't think of the word. So that's kind of like my motto here. Now, obviously, you run into everyone's question is like, but the doctors, what if they don't do that? Or like, how do you onboard a doctor to be able to give you the correct records and to to follow the right scanning protocol? What if they don't have a scanner? You know, I've created every single scanning procedure you could think of for any type of case to where there's pictures. It's a whole work instruction for everything. So when the doctor comes on board, they get everything. They get all the packets on how to scan every case, and they're laminated. So that way they can put it on their walls if they want to.
Wow.
So it's really like plug and play when they have a scanner. Now, when they don't have a scanner, that's where we're pretty new. So I've gone ahead and I've ordered scanners so we can loan them out to people and have chairside technicians come in and scan for them if they need to.
What scanner did you get?
So I used to be Medit, but I'm starting to see that iTero is pretty good.
Really?
And Trios, yeah.
Yeah.
Trios and iTero are very good. So I went ahead with the Trios, but iTero is very good. The one thing is like it's hard to set it up to where it goes directly to you, to the lab.
Sure.
So it has to go through like a model building process. But I know that I'm sure if I asked pretty please, can we just skip it? They would, but it's really hard to get a hold of people that are able to do that in there. So I went with Trios, and it just goes right to the inbox. I mean, Trios is very simple to use. They have the 360 denture scan and everything like that. So it's very
no, I love
cool.
the Trios. Yeah.
And then we haven't pulled the trigger yet, but photogrammetry is going to be another thing that we're going to be buying. But right now, I mean, we're very successful with doing these full arches modelless without photogrammetry.
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah.
Yeah, we have this this digital jig, but it's a little different than what you've seen online. But we do this digital jig and do some digital alter casting with it, and it's very accurate to the point. Most of the time, we're not even moving them. You know, we're not even alter casting digitally. It's like right on the money, and we're doing no tie bases in our Zirconia. So we're really getting a seamless fit.
So what are you doing? Scan bodies? Scan that?
Yeah, we're doing scan bodies. We're scanning the scan bodies, the opposing, and then depending on if they have a temporary or not, then we're using that as the bite for the vertical. And then if we don't, let's say they have a denture, we're utilizing like a 360 scan of the denture.
Mm-hmm.
Scan that, they get a try-in device or a printed try-in and the digital jig. The digital jig that we have, it has a pre-cut, so it's got like a pre-tear almost, like, so if any kind of tension from a screw when they're screwing it down, it snaps, so it breaks off those pieces, and when it breaks off the pieces, you can hear it clicks. And what they do is they pick it up in between with a light cure resin in between each one, so even if there's a microscopic flex to it, that resin is going to lock the flex into place. And the ones that are snapped, they're going to be in the right position. You take that and then we scan it in, and we're able to digitally move our analogs on our try-in or on our final if we're going to go straight to final. So we're doing, along with that, that's a part of our process.
You don't verify it on a model. I mean, you don't have a model, so you're able to verify it on digital. That's fascinating to me.
It's pretty cool. It's very simple, and a majority of the time, like I said, we're not even moving them. Just in a way is like
confirming.
Yeah, but like proper training for the staff. So like the clinical staff, what we do is if they request a training date or an onboarding date, right now for me, it's me going there, and we have 2 or 3 patients, and we run a whole training session on how to scan cross arch, full arch scan bodies the right way. So that way there's no incorrect stitching, making sure that the settings on the scanner are set correctly, and then also how to identify problems if we need to rescan or if we need to cut here. And we go into like real detail. We like do like a full training session with our docs.
And I bet you they appreciate the hell out of it.
Yeah, especially because it's a free service right now that I'm providing for them, because I just think that it's necessary in any account that I get it. I think it's necessary to provide the training because every lab is different, and you can't expect them to be accustomed to a brand new lab if you've never trained them on your procedure.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to get what you want, you have to tell them what you want.
Exactly.
You gotta show them how to get you what you want, or you'll never get what you want.
Exactly. And that's paired with so we do a lot of overnight and same day printed provisionals. So we're able to actually consistently now, they scan the patient after surgery. We deliver in 24 hours. So that's appointment 1 for the delivery of the temporary. Appointment 2 it's 3 appointments for them, but the second time that they get something from us, which would be the try-in and the digital jig, that's another appointment. So 1 appointment after post-op 4 months, and then we're delivering Zirconia on the 3rd. And we haven't broke that yet.
That's awesome.
Now I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
But we're able to maintain 3 appointment deliveries. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So it's been very consistent, and we're pretty happy of how it's going to go. And I think that, photogrammetry is just going to aid us even more. But also, not every doctor in the U.S. means to spend $50,000 on a scanner. That they'll use maybe once a month. So we want to be able to make sure that either way, the model-less workflow is available to all doctors, not just ones that have photogrammetry.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea of it.
John, I love it, man. You're doing some great things down there in Florida.
Thank you. I think that's about it. I think we covered everything.
Yeah. And we covered that hour real quick. Wasn't even looking at the time. I was like, holy moly, we're done. So,
yeah.
Fantastic, John. That's awesome what you're doing down there. And
thank you.
Thanks for coming on to tell your story. I think it's really good. I think you have a good point on positive reinforcement. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast since, so I think it's good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for having me on. Ever since I saw you when you came with Preet to Peterson, I was just like, man, I would love to be on his podcast. I just love what you do. It's just we're able to spread word to people that need it.
Yeah.
And people that just want to listen to 2 people shoot shit.
That's the idea. Well, I'm happy to shoot the shit with you, John. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
A huge thank you to John for coming on our podcast. I'm really sorry that I missed this conversation, since I too worked for my dad for years and years and years. It's amazing what you have learned over the years and that you are able to provide what seems to be a very positive work environment. But you are absolutely correct in the fact that we need not only get more technicians into our industry, but we need to keep the ones that do start and positively reinforce them. Simple encouragement sure is a great way to do it. You can tell as you grow your lab and bring on additional employees that they are going to be super successful and great technicians. And I'd love to see them grow.
All right, everybody. That's all we got for you. And we will talk to you next week.
See you in Chicago!
Last weekend.
Chicago. I know.
It was great to see you in Chicago.
Just give me my moment. See ya!
Bye.
Yeah, you had a good time in Chicago.
The views and opinions expressed on the Voices from the Bench podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the host or Voices from the Bench, LLC.